I've got our Gulp file open. We're going to make a few efficiency changes in this file to help us with a few different things that are going on that we're having to do manually. So what I've done is taken the template one, taken those files, put them into, you can see here, a P2 folder, just drop them in there, including the node modules. So this is going to be an enhancement, and this is going to be template 2. So this is the one that we would use going forward. And whenever you do this kind of thing where you're taking node modules and dropping them in and using a package JSON that's already there, you want to do an npm install so you can be sure all those packages get installed that are related to the package JSON. So I'm just going to back that out because I should have those now. And going and looking inside of the package JSON, you'll notice this template here, this is going to be template 2, has jQuery, it has tether, Font Awesome is going to be there as well. So all of those will get installed if you don't have them in your node modules that you're carrying over from template 1, for example, or from somewhere else maybe. So one thing that is not happening whenever we run our Gulp file, and let's see if we go down to our move fonts, we're not moving the Font Awesome CSS. And that's going to be inside of node modules. I'm just going to scroll down real quick. We can take a look at this file. So here we are, Font Awesome CSS. We want this file here, and I don't need to open it, but if we go down here to index, and we're going to have Font Awesome up here just like we did before. So this will also get an update as part of our template 2 update. And we're going to put Font Awesome. We want that local reference. So before, I was taking it, we moved it manually into our CSS folder. I'm just going to close our node modules. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Gulp actually populate this here. And then our jQuery over here, everything there is looking pretty good except for Popper. So that's another unique case for now because of the versioning going on with Popper versus the beta of Bootstrap 4. So I think once the final Bootstrap is out, Popper should be able to get populated through the Gulp file by doing an npm install of that Popper. We saw before that doesn't work right now. So what we're going to do with Gulp is just mainly move that CSS, that Font Awesome CSS file, going to have it do the move for us. And then later on, when Popper is more compatible through npm, you can just add another path like we're about to do here into your SAS, maybe the SAS section, or since we're not actually going to be compiling, because this is going to do some compiling, we're just moving files, you might add a whole new task, move CSS, and then you could just put in a special name for that for Popper and move that Popper file over. It's actually a JS, so maybe up in here you could add one for Popper. Okay, so we're going to add in a comma, single quotes, because this is an array, remember, it's inside of these braces. So we're just going to add the path to that CSS file. And it's going to be a node modules Font Awesome. What we want to do is get Font Awesome and .css. So that's going to move all the fonts, which we have now. You can see in here, they're all moved. And now we're going to automatically move that as well. So I've done my npm install. I've made sure I've got all the packages that are being referenced inside of package JSON. And we're going to go ahead now and see if that Font Awesome CSS is going to get moved in there. And then I'll just zip this one up as template number 2. And that's the one we can utilize going forward. We need to make that small change as well inside of our index.html. All right, so I'm just going to do a Gulp. You can see here that starts us off, so that's working there. Let's just see if we have that move that we're looking for. And I'm going to refresh. So it looks like we don't have that, although if you look, you'll notice there's no errors. And before I try to run it again, I'm going to go take a look inside of Font Awesome, inside of this folder, just make sure that is correct. So we have fontawesome.css. It's actually, this is the problem, so it should be a CSS. Now one thing about this, it is important to notice we didn't get an error. So you need to verify that whenever these tasks run in Gulp to make sure that all the different moves occurred, because it's not going to explicitly tell you that there was a problem. So I'm going to stop this and restart it. All right, so let's go back and check. Let's do a refresh here. And looks like that is still not getting moved over. So scrolling up, I'm going to try and figure out why that is not cooperating. So let's see here. We are inside of node modules, fun awesome CSS, fun awesome.css. And we have move fonts is actually running, but for some reason it's just not doing what we're wanting it to. Actually, this is the problem here. So it's going into fonts, which is not really where we want it to go. So scrolling down, if we look in fonts, we'll see that file there. So there's a couple of things that can happen here. You can create a whole different one of these tasks just to move it into the CSS, which would really be correct, or just change the reference whenever you're referencing inside of the index.html so that it does point into that fonts folder. So to make all of this really compliant with the folder structures that we have here, we're going to create another task that's going to do that move. So I'm just going to copy, and we're going to call this move CSS. And I am going to take this out because we don't need that there anymore. And we are going to remove this part because that is not going to be needed. Remove that comma and change that to CSS. Now we have a task name there, which down here we're going to go ahead and add. So we have our move fonts. We can go ahead now at the end of this, move CSS, comma, save. And that should have actually run. Well, we're not watching this file, so that's not going to run. What we can do instead, stop this, do our gulp again, and scroll over. Now we can see we have our font awesome there. And I'm just going to remove this one. See, scroll down a little bit here. Delete. Yes. And so now what we want to do is go into here, and we're going to paste in this reference that we used from our first project to font awesome. All right, so that will go in right there and save. All right, so that is going to be the template that's going to get used going forward. And then what we're going to do next is go ahead and jump into creating our index.html. We're also going to be working inside of our Sass file. So those are going to be the two main areas that we're going to be working with in our next lesson. We're going to now get into creating our layout for our resume website. So we're going to have two columns you can see here, and we're going to have our footer, our header at the top stretches across. We're going to have our image as well. So all the images are going to be there for you when you download this project. So we're going to go ahead now and look at our index.html. Okay, so to start, I'm going to go ahead and remove our hello world, and we have a little bit of styling here just for a background. I am going to remove this here, clean that out. And what we're going to do is start off with a container, which is going to be inside of a div. So this is going to be our main div. So I'm going to do container. And next we're going to have main container. That's not a Bootstrap 4 tag, by the way. This is something that we're going to create and help us with our styling there. So next we're going to have that image of a person, which is going to be coming out of here. So there's the images that we're going to be using. And we're going to have a path to img, and we're going to use person png. We're going to have a class as well for that, profile-png. Okay, so what we're going to do now is start with a header tag, and in here we're going to do our h1 hello in all caps, comma, and then we're going to do my name is. We can do it in strong, John Doe. And then we're going to continue that sentence, and I am a web developer. Save. So let's just take a quick look, make sure our image is coming through and that background is gone. Okay, so path issue there with the image. Just going to do a quick inspect, and let's see here again with popper there. So this is what we're looking for, and it's just saying it can't find it. So we're going to see what may be the problem there. All right, so in here we do have person, and it looks like we're referencing images instead of img. So what I am going to do is just do a rename on this. That should fix that particular problem. As for popper, it isn't here right now. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in, so we'll have the reference. I'm going to go ahead and change this now, though. All right, and save that. Okay, so if I go over here to our JS folder, there is popper. We have the reference to popper. It's actually the min. min. Okay, so let's take a look now. The browser has reloaded, and we can see we now have our image. We're not going to worry about this .map file for now. Okay, so we're going to continue building out the rest of this here. So we have our header. Then we're going to have a line that divides. So we're going to do an img. This is just going to be line png, and we'll have a class equals line. All right, so if we go to our browser, then we can see the line is there. Let's look and see where we are here. All right, so you can see what we have is up here. This is our image. Obviously, we're missing a lot of formatting, but this is the beginnings of it. This is that line, so it kind of fades off on each side. So that is what we have now. And the class we have here is going to help with some adjusting of the positioning of that line also. Now we're going to get into our columns. So we're going to start with a div class row. And we're going to do a 7 and a 5 because that's going to equal 12. So in this one, in this project, actually on the projects going forward, we're not going to do any columns where the column count adds up to be over 12 like we did in the last one. So we saw the effects of doing that. It just will stack them. You'll get columns that span all the way across when you exceed 12. And this one here, we're going to adhere to the Bootstrap 4 recommendations of staying under a total count of 12. So because we only have 2 columns, we're going to make use of 7 and 5. So this is going to be our first column. We're going to do a class, and we're going to go with MD and 7. Then we can go ahead and add in the next column. It's going to be another MD. We're going to do a 5. Okay, so we are going to start populating this, and we should start seeing some structure at this point as well when we start adding some content in here. So we're going to do an H2. This is going to be about me. And then in here, we're going to have a paragraph with some lorem ipsum, which I'll fill in shortly. Then we're going to do an H2. This is going to be contact info. And we'll have some more lorem ipsum. So I'm going to grab that to put in here. Then we'll take a quick look and see what that looks like. All right, so right here, we're going to fill that in. Now below contact info, we're actually going to have an unordered list. I'm not going to do paragraphs here because we have our phone number, our email. So again, let's go take a look and see where this is now. Okay, so here's our 2 columns. We'll go and look. About me, contact. So here's where we're heading now. We're just going to start filling this section in over here off to the right, which is going to be where the unordered list comes in. So if we have our list, we're going to start with a UL class is going to equal, and we're going to do contact list. And so we'll just go down the line. We're going to reference our images. We'll have our text content as well. So we're going to do an img source, which is going to equal img phone.png, and we'll just put in some phones. So 978 555 555. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to use it for email. We're going to use it for Facebook and Twitter. So just go in and change out the reference on the images. Then I'll move over to the right. We can start changing the text references out as well. And that is Twitter. So you'll notice on the image references, there isn't anything special, no class references that we're needing to do there. So we're going to do johndoe@gmail.com. We'll have Facebook here. And we're going to have a link as well. So inside of a span, we'll do Facebook .com/ and we'll just do John Doe. And we're going to do a similar kind of thing with the spans down here. So we'll do Twitter, do a space span, and we're going to have twitter.com John Doe. Put a little bit of spacing there. Okay, so this is before we have any of our other classes in. So we're going to start adding those. Let's take a look now and see where we are with this. So here's the target. And here's where we are. So you can see the dramatic difference without any kind of styling. So now we're going to start applying the styling that gives the coloring. It gives us the spacing here, the bold as well. So that is what we're going to look at now. So we have a few classes here that we've created. We've got contact list. We've got main container. So we're going to start adding in some of those. We've got line. And those are going to go in here inside of our style.css. Before we get into our styling, I want to go ahead and create 4 variables. So we're going to have our primary color. That is going to be a hex of 3B5A76. We're going to have our background color. And we're going to have DED. Then we're going to have as well text color. That is going to be 363636. And then we're going to have font size. And we'll just do font, which is going to be 16px. And you can see down here we're getting some errors. So it's pointing particularly to where kind of the separation occurs. But that's not actually the problem. The problem is that, and it's kind of difficult to understand what's going on here, this is not actually a valid color. So what we want is we're missing an A here. So now that works. You can see everything, the colors light up as well within the editor. So I'll save that. I should be able to run Gulp at this point without errors. And there we are. So just a side note, if you ever see something like that, it's probably because the hex value, you don't have enough characters in there to actually complete a full color. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stop with these variables that we've created in our SAS file. Then we're going to come back in the next lesson. We're going to start building out a lot of the classes that we saw inside of our index.html, and then begin watching it form up, at least the top part of it, into the target web page. We left off with a little bit of styling, or at least layout structure that we have on our page, which you can see here. Now we're going to begin adding in some styling that's going to help shape a lot of this up that we have on our target and make this page start beginning to look more like it. So it's a little bit more engaging whenever you can have, as you're building your site, have it start looking like the target site rather than getting way down the road and then start applying all the various styling that brings things together. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to start off with a body tag, which is going to be pretty key to how the styling is created on the other site. We're going to start off with no padding on bottom. We're going to reference particular fonts that's being used. So we'll have Open Sans, and that is inside of single quotes because we have that compound word there. We'll have Arial. We're going to do Tahoma. And then we're going to do our color, which is going to be our variable for text color. We're going to have as well the background. That is just going to be our variable background color and font size. So we may be doing a little bit of overwriting of Bootstrap here. We're going to reference our variable for font. But this is all in line with what the target site is actually doing. So we're going with the same kind of content. Now let's go back over here. We don't have our Gulp running. We want to go ahead and get that up and going so we can see some differences. And here we are. So we can see this font's a little more slender than what we had before. It's also not completely black. We have a little bit of fade here. It's got some gray to it. So back here inside of our SAS file, we're going to continue. And let's see here. We have some H2 tags. And right there in the About Me, we're going to do some styling to get these H2s to look like what we saw on the target site, which is really coloring. So they're all caps and they also have color. So going back over here into our SAS, we are going to just target the regular H2 tag at this point. So we'll do a font weight of 700. Then we'll have a text transform. That is going to be uppercase. So we're not having to type that uppercase in. We're just going to do it through styling. We're going to adjust line height. This is going to be 1.4 ems. We're going to also font size on this one a 1.5 em. Then we're going to add some margin to the top. Actually, we're going to come back and get this one. I'm just going to save that on the H2. And knowing exactly what to put for these values here, that's kind of a visual thing depending on preference. Okay, so let's make sure we are running, and we are. And okay, so we'll go back over here. We can see our uppercase is getting applied. We don't have any coloring right now, of course, and our margin at the top. So if we go and look, you can see it a little better on this one, but if we right click, inspect, and go into here, so on our H2s is where that little bit of margin was. Now you can see the orange right above contact info is where this margin is going to be coming in. So over here, you can't see it as well, and you probably won't be able to see it once it gets applied, but it has its use once everything starts coming together. So we're going to do a margin top, which is going to be 20 px. Now we're going to do our coloring. So there's going to be a class coming in, primary, and we're also going to reference where we were making use of strong. And actually, I'm going to break this into multiple lines. So we have our strong tag that we were referencing in our H2. And so here we're going to do color. It's going to be primary. And I need to do my $, primary color, save. So going over here, again, the H2s are going to get referenced on that. We have our strongs that, let's see here, up here. So John Doe, you should see change color as well. And no primary class at this point. That's coming down the road, but you can see the effect now with the coloring on these. So we're going to go back now and continue building out. We have our main container that we're going to work on now. So that was a class. We're going to reference that as a class. And we are going to do a background, white. Let's see, this should be background. And we're going to have a position of relative. Just reference that. We're going to do a top 80 px. Save. Let's go look now. You can see what's going on as we begin applying this. So we have a little margin around this, and right click and inspect on main container. So let's see what effect any of this is having. Of course, the background. So that's how we start getting that look that we see here, where it's all bordered off in the white. I've got my inspector kind of jumping around. So you can see our white background, how that's differentiating everything. Our top 80, see the difference that is making? That's helping us just on the top. So there we are. And we're going to continue now with a little bit more build out on main container. So what we have also, we want to do a bottom margin, or sorry, this is going to be margin bottom dash bottom. That's going to be 80. So we'll have a consistency there. And I am not going to save this just yet. Let's take a look at what we have down here. So we are hitting the bottom, and that is what that margin bottom is going to fix. We're going to do some padding all around. So we're going to use this particular kind of syntax to get padding everywhere except on our top. And let's see, put my semicolon and save. Let's go look now. All right, so going back into this container, I guess I have to refresh. I'm not seeing the other parts of this come through right now. Save, make sure that is there. Let's go look at our CSS just to do a verification. Here's our styling. So we have our main container. All of those are in there. Go back over here. I think at least for this over here, I may have to refresh or re-inspect probably would work. So let's just do an inspect and go back up here. There they are. Okay, so margin bottom's not going to have an effect right now. You can see, remove that. Although padding will. So if I check that off, you can see the difference that's having with inside of here, inside of this container, inside of the white is where the padding is having an effect. Okay, so continuing to build out parts of this, we also made use of a header tag, and I'm going to start with that. So that's just a straight header tag, and we're going to do some height, and we're also going to work with overflow on this one. So min height is going to be 100 px, and we're going to have our overflow that's going to be set to auto. Save that, go back over here, come up here to where we have our header tag, this right here. And yeah, so I'm going to have to refresh so we can see or re-inspect, but I'm just going to refresh and I think that will bring it in. There we are. So now we can see our min height, and let's go down here. So there's where we are with our header, and the min height is not going to have an effect now because it is just the minimum, although it's kind of pushing this down here, this line. All right, so if I scroll up and I undo this minimum height, it looks like it's not having an effect. But watch this line right here. That's where it's going to kind of come into play. So you can see it's actually pushing everything down. So that's where that is coming in. So let's look at the header now. It's just this text here. And whenever we set our overflow, and you can see if I do some stuff here, it's making this down here jump, but that's not really the purpose of what's going on. So if this were to scroll outside of its box, which is this right here, so it's highlighted now and we can see it, it's not scrolling outside of it because you can see there's another little bit of highlighting on the text. But if it were going to scroll past our div that we have here, header being an HTML5 semantic tag is basically a div. So if the text were to flow outside of the div, it would just wrap with this auto and you would get scroll bars. So we don't have enough text to cause that, nor would we want enough text to cause scroll bars, but we're just going to do our auto on that. Depending on the browser, what's going on with the browser, it could happen. So we're going to leave it on auto just to be as a safeguard. Now that we're here, though, inside of header, there's another styling we're going to want to apply, which is the H1 right here actually does contain our text. So we did styling on the header. Now we're going to look at some styling on this H1 while we are here. So this is going to be just for the header. Inside of the header, we're going to reference the H1. So both as tags, not as classes. And we're going to tighten it up with no margin. Let's see, we're next going to do padding. We're going to do a 20 on the top, and that is really all we're going to do on that. So we can have a little separation from the image. Going to do a little bit of adjusting on the font. Again, that's preference, just however you would want your font to look. So we're overriding what is happening with the default font that we have. We're going to set our weight 700. And as well, let's go take a look at the target. You can see everything here is in uppercase. We are not in uppercase, so except for hello, but that's one thing we're going to do. So everything inside of the H1, which is everything we saw at the top of the page, we're going to do a text transform, another one for uppercase. And then we're going to have letter spacing, which is going to be a -1 px. So we're pulling them in, basically, our letters. Text align, we want that to be centered, just like we saw in the target. And finally, this is a common line height that we are using, which is going to be 1.4 m. And save, not 3, but m. Okay. And we go back out here, take a look at ours. I don't know if that actually ran. What I'm going to do is stop this, run gulp once more, make sure we're saved. Let's see, down here is where I want to be. Okay, and just scrolling through, make sure we have some alignment. All right, let's take a look at this H1 over here. So there's everything that we have, and scrolling through. So what I'm not seeing is a lot of our custom H1 that we applied against the header. Actually, if I go up into header, I can probably see some of it. No, I'm seeing what a lot of inherited basically is what I am seeing. So I'm going to go back, make sure our Sass looks okay. And before I save this, you may have noticed I'm actually in the CSS file, which you don't want to be doing. So that can happen if you're flipping back and forth between the two, like I've been doing. And basically what would happen is it would overwrite my work, so you'd lose all your work. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this into the Sass. Now save it. If I go back over here, close this out and don't save and look at it now, there's all of our work. So that could have been a small disaster if I would have lost that work. Just something to keep in mind. You don't really want to have that CSS open because that will happen to you. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look now at the site. You can see we're centered. If we go into our header, go into our H1 that's inside of the header and take a look at the code we just added, or a little bit more of the subtle changes on this. Let's look at letter spacing. So watch whenever I remove our -1 pixel, you can see the lettering, it gets a little bit further apart. You bring that just to 1 px and it shrinks it up a little bit, makes it more tighter. So now we have some styling starting to go to work for us on the top of this up here. And going back over here, there's some styling that we're going to be adding, which is going to come into play for line, for profile, image. So we're going to add those in our next lesson. When we get into there, we're going to add for our contact list. And also we're going to start building out the main section down here, the rest of this content, so we can really start seeing the rest of the page. Then we're going to add in our styling for those. So kind of building it up, watching it grow as we go, and we're going to see more of that in our next lesson. We're going to now start building up on the rest of the page here. We're going to add the footer first so we can have that, because there's not much to it. And then we're going to begin building out the content that's below the About Me and the Contact. So if we look, we can see what we have here. So we have these progress bars over here indicating how much of the skill is available. And then we just keep going down with these different logos, these different areas here under services. So two big rows rather that we're going to build out in 4 sections all together if we want to break those up that way. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our code editor. And we're going to add the footer now. So that's going to go down here and right above these script files. So this is going to be a semantic tag. And we're not going to have any classes inside of there, but we are going to create a container. And let's see, that did not complete because I left off the quote. So there we go. And in here, we're just going to do a paragraph and we'll add in our copyright. And then we're going to do an ampersand, copy, and semicolon. So we're just escaping out the symbol basically. And all rights reserved. All right. So that is our footer. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. If there's something wrong, it's not difficult to fix it, so we're not going to jump out just yet and look at it. We still have Gulp running. You can see down here it kind of flashed a little bit when I saved this index.html. So now we're going to move on to creating some of these other sections. So we need to start first with a row. We're going to have a div class equals row. And in here we're going to go with our current 7/5 column configuration. That's going to be on a medium size for our breakpoint. So we're going to column medium 7, and we can go ahead with one more of these is going to be our 5. So I'll just change that and put some line breaks there because this is where our main content is going to go. All right, so now we're moving into the education and experience section. Take a look. This is where we are going to be adding content, and then we're just going to go ahead with this on our 5 column size, 5 columns, and start adding some of these, so we'll be able to see that in our site next time we come and check it out. So what we're going to do is an H2, that's what we've been doing with these. We'll put our pound in there. This is going to be education and experience. So that is our header for the section. So now we're getting into some text. A lot of this is just text. So let's go over here. So this is what we have, and this whole box is in gray. Now to create the effect, we're going to use a media class. So we're going to have a div class equals media, and media is going to be one of ours that's not coming out of Bootstrap 4. So we're going to start adding in some of these, and we'll add the Sass in a little bit later once we have some of this layout work complete, so that we can really start seeing the effect everything's going to be having. So it's going to be another one, media left, just from refinement of alignment. So we'll have our dates in here, and then let's see, below this we're going to create the main body for this particular section. So we start off with our media, and everything's going to be wrapped in there. This right here is just going to push everything on the left, and then on the right of that, let's take a quick look, is where we're going to put in this part. So under here we're going to have another div and another class, which we're going to call media body. So that is how we're breaking this content horizontally into columns the way that we have it. So we're going to do an H5 on this one. That's going to be a class media heading. And what we can do is go ahead with the school, Whittier Technical High School. And then for the basically subtext, we're just going to use a paragraph. And this right here is just going to be some lorem ipsum, so I'm going to paste that in. And we're closing out. I'm going to go ahead and roll some of these up to make sure everything is closing. All of those are closed. Our, let's see, media for that one is closed. So the way it's going to work, I'm going to go ahead and save that, is each one of these little sections are going to be a media. So let's go ahead and copy this one, and I'm going to just put it below here. And I'm going to put a little bit of spacing for our column 5 so there's no mix up on that. I'm going to go ahead with this one. We're going to jump out, make sure this is following the pattern that we want. So this is going to be 2003. We're going to leave, let's see, the lorem ipsum the same. We're just going to change the high schools or the schools here. So we'll have Salem State College. All right, so now we're going to check ours out. So here's where we should be. Let's take a look over here. Yeah, so this will tighten up once we get our classes in. There's our footer down there. So we're going to go ahead and add in the remainder of these. And then we're going to add in some content on our column 5, because then we'll really see the effect of the classes that we're going to add, the media, media left, media body, start coming in. So now we're going to have a 2004 to 2008, just kind of quickly go through some of these. This is going to be Massachusetts Institute of Technology. All right, and we have a few more, actually one more, I believe. And this is going to be now 2009 to 14. And this is just for web programming. Let's see, web programming job. All right, and now we get into the other side, which is programming skills. So we're going to go ahead with an H2 for our header. All right. Now the way these are going to work for the images that we have, we're going to put them in a div. We're going to have a class called progress. And what we can copy is this part here as we go down. So we're going to go ahead and start building this one out. Then we'll have something we can copy and work with, because most of it's going to be changing of classes. So this right here is going to be 2 classes. We're going to have progress bar and progress bar striped. Throw a roll in there for progress bar. Area is going to be value now of 0. So these parts of the area controls are particularly to tell them how much of the progress is actually being used, because remember, it's a graphic. So visually you can see it there, but if you weren't able to and you had to rely on something to speak it to you, that's what this is doing. And we're going to have value max, so 0 to 100, and I am going to put that in quotes. And we're going to have style min width, that should be in quotes, and this is going to be 2, actually want semicolon 2m with 100%. For this, you can see you can clearly put your own inline styles if you want to do that. And I'm going to do HTML, CSS, and save. So let's just take a look here and see where we are. So you can see what is happening now with the classes that we're using with the progress bar. Now the progress bars, all these classes here are coming out of Bootstrap. So that's how it's creating those, and then we have our style called stripe. The reason for the inline is so that we can specify the width, because remember they have different widths. So that's what we're doing with this inline here. This one here, of course, is all the way specified. So if we go out and look, we have quite a few of these looking at the target site that we're going to have to add. So we're just going to go through a bunch of copy and paste to get those into there. So in our next lesson, we're going to finish those off, those progress bars. Then we're going to go back. We're going to start working on a lot of the styling that is being referenced, our own classes. And then the final part of this is going to be adding the services and the recent projects along with their styling as well. We last left off working on our progresses here. So I'm going to roll one of these up, and what we're going to do is copy right here, and we're going to make use of this a few times. So let's bring that over. And what we're going to do is change these as we go through them, and also the associated name here. Okay, so next on the list is going to be PHP, and we're going to have MySQL. This is going to go out to 95%. So to make it work, all we need to do is change here and save. So now we should be able to take a look at our site, and you can see there we are at 95%. Go and look over here. Notice when they get all the way to the edge, they are rounded, but if they're not all the way to the edge, then they're not going to be rounded. Looks like we missed our JavaScript as well, so we're going to go with that. That's going to be 100%. And so I can copy this one because that's already 100%, and then just change it to JavaScript. Okay, so I'll just roll that one out too. And now we're going to move on to our next one. Let's bring that back over. So we just have a few of these before we get to the next set of rows in the page. So right now what we're going to do is for Ruby on Rails, this is going to be a 90%. Next one's going to be an 80%. And the title on that one's going to be Action, Script, and Flash. So here we have 80. So we're just watching for 2 divs, and then after that we can go with our next one. So down here we're going to do, after Action Script is going to be Python. We're going to have another 80 on this one. And now we're going to do Java, which is going to be 70%. And we'll do C#, and that's going to be 70% as well. Okay, so now we're just going to take a look and make sure those are looking good. So it looks like there's a problem with C#. Yeah, that should be 70. There we go. And so all of these, now we're done with those. We should have 4 divs, which we do, to close out that entire section. So now we're going to start adding in some of the styling that goes along with these. Okay, so going over to our SAS file, just going to take a look at where we are. So we have our H2, our primary strong. We have, let's see here, we do have our header. We have our header H1, main container. We don't have row, so we're going to go ahead with that. That's going to be a class, and for this, we're going to have a margin bottom of 20 px. As well, we have that profile image. We're going to go ahead with that now. And we're going to have a width of 160 px, as well as a display block. Then there's a few more things we want on this one here. We're going to have a margin, going to have an auto on that, a margin of 0 with an auto, and a minus 80 px. Position it as relative. And finally, it's going to be a top minus 80 px, and that should be position. And we had line, so we're going to add that now. And that was just going to be a max width of 100%. And save. So some other things that we had in here, go and look at the top from earlier on, were our contact list. So we're going to work on that as well now. That's going to be contact list. And in here we'll have padding 0. We'll have a margin 0. So there's a couple more things that we want on here, and then we're going to get into our other items that we're adding for progress. So contact list is also going to have contact list li. And in there, we're going to change list style to remove the bullet points. We're also going to go with the font weight of bold, and we're going to do a line height, and that's going to be 3.2 em. So quite a bit of change there. Let's take a quick look and scroll up here. This is really starting to come into its own. This up here is going to need a little bit of work, but we can see where the progress that's being made on there, that part in the top section. So now we're going to have a span we're targeting here. Go back over here. So contact list, and we had our spans there. And inside of here, we're going to do a display as block. There's a few things we're going to have. We're going to remove the margin and the padding. So we'll have padding. So both of those 0, get rid of them. Line height is going to be a 0.1 em. So we'll do a 0.1 em. We're going to have a margin left, and that is going to be 37 pixels. And we're also going to do a font size of 15 px. Color, we're going to have CC, so we're going to choose this gray and save. So let's go and look at this now and take a look over here. Do it like this. So this right here doesn't seem as though it's having an effect. That's our profile image class. So our profile PNG, and that's probably actually the problem. So that should be image and not PNG. Let me scroll up. So yeah, image is there, and here at the top we actually want IMG. All right, so there we go. And this, the way it's dipping into the white background is purely based on the image. That require a bit of work to do in CSS, so you can see the image, why that's happening. So the image is certainly helping us out a lot there. All right, so here's the other sections that we were adding content to as well. And if we look at some of this, go ahead and inspect. All right, so down here where we have our spans in particular, there's a little bit more going on there. So here's what the work we did on the span in particular, making it a block, so you can see what that does, pushes it down into there. We want everything kind of tight, so that's why there's no margin, no padding. The line height, you can see the difference that is making, so make it really small, keep everything again together, really close. Margin left, you can see why, because the image right here is pushing the text over, but there's not one there, so that's why that's happening. And the image is not pushing this over because of the weird line height that we have, so it's kind of an illusion, an optical illusion, the way that it's working like that. There's two lines, but we've made them so small. All right, then we have the font size, of course, you can see the difference there, and then the color. So that is everything going on with that part. But we are going to continue with the styling that we've got working back here. And let's see here. So we left off on our span. Now we have our media class. And in here, we're going to do a background, which is going to be our background. We're also going to have padding 10 all around, px. And there's another section, I'm going to put it up here, we don't have yet. It's called work list. I'm just going to create a placeholder for that, and we'll make use of it when we get into our projects. So what I want to do here is media left. I'm going to handle that one now. And in there, we are going to do a width of 85px. We're going to have padding, that's going to be 0, 10px, 0, 0. So we want our progress and our footer as well. This is going to pretty much cover all the styling we're going to be using. So for progress, what we're going to do is add in a 1.25 rem on this one. And then we're going to have a margin, which is going to be bottom 1.25 as well, rem. So these rems that are being used here, which is really the Bootstrap 4-way, those are relative, whereas something like a PX or an M is not relative. They're relative to the base type that is inside of the browser is what they're doing. So these up here, and we're going to check that in a minute on our contact list span, because you can see they are using the M's. Before we go out to the browser, let's just do footer real quick. So a few things on there. We're going to have to change the background, of course, and that's going to get our background color. We're going to do color as white, and we're going to have text align. We want that centered. We're also going to do a padding top, because we certainly need that, of 20, and then a padding on the bottom of 20. And that should cover our footer. So let's go now back out here, take a look. So there is our footer. So this gray here is going to go away, of course. And then we're going to check this part right here and do an inspect. So this is the M. If I go ahead and click, and I've got this highlighted so I can do one rem. And you can see in that case, it's not really making much difference. And we also had that, we go up, let's see here, M on this contact list LI. So here's an LI right here. If I click again, we have 2 rem. Leave that. And you can see it's not making difference. So the reason it's not making difference is because the M was already relative to the base of whatever the browser styling was using, but it is the Bootstrap 4-way. So what we're going to do is start adding in that section that goes down here, as well as clean this up so we can get these into their appropriate columns. Again, a lot of the styling is already there, and let's just take a quick look at our CSS to make sure it's getting generated. And yeah, so everything in that regard is there. All right, so we have cleaning up to do on this education experience, but we are going to be bringing in the last section, and that's going to complete our project for this resume website. Now we're getting to the tail end of this project. And if we go and look at our browser, you can see that we don't have our columns aligned the way they should. So programming skills should be over here on the right. And going back into here, I think the problem is that we have likely an extra div in this education and experience section. So if we look at these, we should have our 2 divs within a media tag or class-based tag. So what we're going to do is just start looking through here and make sure that they're all closing off the way they should. So these here are working together. It looks like this one here is an orphan. I'm going to remove that one. And because I did copy and paste, I think I'll find there are extra ones among these others too. So I'm just going to remove what appears to be that extra one on those. And then let's see, we'll go ahead and start that part there. We do need to close off our row. So I think this one is needed. And let's take a look. So there we are. and that looks pretty good. All right, so we're going to add the final class in here, which was work list, because now we're getting into actually using that. So what we want to do is we're going to use some LIs in here. So I am going to reference that inside of here. So just like we did above where we had this right here, we're going to remove the bullet points. And let's see, this is not going to be a class. So we're going to say none. And then we're going to have our float as left. So we can take a look at that once it's completed. We'll go ahead and do padding all around. And finally, we're going to have a margin bottom of 30. All right, and now going back over here, and I want to close this CSS so I don't make a mistake and go into there. We can go ahead and start now with this next section. All right, so we're going to have a class of row. We're going to have our two main columns. So we're going to have a class, column, medium, 7. It's going to follow the same structure we've been using. So I just copy this out, paste that there, put a little bit of spacing, and change this to 5. Okay, so going to the target site, scroll down here. This is now what we're going to be building out. So those have various colors in them. We'll start with the heading, which is going to be services. And now we're going to start with those sections. We're going to use some Bootstrap classes to accomplish that. So we're going to have alert. This is going to be called alert success. And we're going to do a row of alert. So inside of here, we're going to do italics, and this is going to be class of FA check. And what that is basically is making use of font awesome. We're going to have our area, and we're going to have hidden equals true. And then over here, we're going to actually do the title. So HTML, CSS, website design. And our div is closing. So now we can copy these. Just remove the spacing. So everything else will pretty much stay the same. So what we want to do is alternate these. So this is going to be alert info. And we're going to change the text. So we'll have web programming, PHP, Rails, Python. Save that. And then I'm just going to put something here. Let's just take a look now, make sure this is starting to develop the way we want it to. And we can see that they are. And then again, this right here is going to tighten up in a little bit. So continuing on with these and making sure we're alternating colors, down here we'll go back to our success. And this is going to be server and database administrator. So we can copy another one of these. Actually, let's see, this is just this, and we'll paste that. And so let's take a look. After server and database, we have 3 more of these. So I'm going to go ahead and paste, and then we'll just alternate their colors. So here we have success. We're going to change this one to info and this one to info. So the last one we had was info. And so we should end on that blue color. And let's see here, not quite. I think we have a div that slipped up in here somewhere, which is probably that right there. Save that. Okay, so now they're looking pretty good. And I'm not going to worry about actually changing the text since that's minor to what we're actually trying to accomplish, because this next part right here goes pretty quick. So we're going to go ahead with our header, and it's going to be recent projects. So now comes our work list. We're going to have a UL class equals work list. And we're just creating these various classes for these different ULs because they don't all follow the same visuals. So it gives us control over particular ones. All right, so we're going to mock out an actual link, and we're going to use images. So we'll have an image source equals img work1 png, and close that off. Now there's 3 more of these, so I'm going to copy, and down here just change these. So we're going to have work 2, 3, 4. Remove some spacing, and let's take a look. Okay, so that's starting to come in. Let's go over here because they should all be vertical like we have here. Also as well, down here, we're not getting our coloring. Go back over here. And that's mainly an issue because this div, I think this one coming from up here, is not quite falling in line. So something's going on that we're stretching out on everything here. So if we move this in, this up here is behaving the way we want it to. This is starting to, but we're not quite there. We shouldn't be so close to the edges on those. All right, so back over here, and we want to get these vertical. So going back into our code, let's make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to. We have our work list, we have our LIs inside of our work list. We don't need any classes inside of those. And let's make sure all of these are ending the way they should. So we have our column 5, that closes out. And up here, if we roll up this, so I think that row is not closing the way it should. Let's try and roll some of these up. Let's see, this one here has got an extra one, and that should close up that row right there. So I'm going to close some of these up so we can really see if they're closing the way that they're supposed to, and just put a space there. Our column 7 doesn't have a closing div. I'm going to go ahead and add that there. And now when I roll that one up, so you'll notice it looks like there's still some that are lingering outside of the div, and that's more a problem with alignment, just the visual alignment within the editor. So if I take these right here and command right bracket, push them over, now they're aligned. So when I roll it up now, it collapses and everything looks good. So let's go look at our site, and we can see there's still something going on with this section here. I'm going to do an inspect, and we can take a look. That is basically this here, this area here has some kind of problem. So we're going to go back into here. We know that this is a problem with the main container. So as I go up here, this is our container. If we close it, notice our closing tag is here, which is going to be the main issue that's going on with this. So I'm going to take that tag and put it here. Let's put a space there, save that. Let's go back now and take a look. Just close that out. So there we are. We can see our logos are aligned. Everything here is looking good. All of this is now aligned, and we can go ahead and stack this now, make sure our responsive design is working, and it is. Scrolling all the way down. So the only thing left actually is the footer. All right, so we're going to go back, and there's not much to the footer, so this should be an easy fix because this right here is a Bootstrap class, so it's not something we're affecting. We're going to go into our SAS, go down to our footer. We have background color. We go up here, and we can see background color is that lighter color, which is not the one we want. We actually want primary color. So going down here, we're just going to replace this with primary color and save. Let's go look now, and there we are. So we have the proper footer at this point, and our site is now complete. So we have now created a great looking resume site that is also responsive.